You know the drill by now. Red Dead Redemption 2 is Rockstar's latest masterpiece, and with so much detail packed into its world, the studio have also managed to work in dozens of Easter eggs, secrets, and references. The states of West Elizabeth and New Hanover are littered with cool little stories, some spooky, others not so much, to the point that, even several weeks after its release, players are still discovering plenty of surprises. For those who have yet to complete Arthur Morgan's story, the first half of this list will be a spoiler-free look at the many Easter eggs and references from Red Dead Redemption 2, so fret not if you haven't finished the story. Let's crack on, shall we? I'm Ewan from WhatCulture, and here are 17 Easter eggs and references you totally missed in Red Dead Redemption 2. Number 17, Red HARLOW. As Red Dead Revolver was the first real installment in the series, Red Dead Redemption 2's title makes no sense, but Revolver's protagonist Red HARLOW is still referenced by countless actors in the prequel. Stumble onto any campsite or saloon and travelers will regale you in the tale of one Red HARLOW. He doesn't actually appear in the game, sadly, but considering how big RDR2 is, it may be wise not to rule him out just yet. Number 16, Harold MacDougall. Harold MacDougall was a racist old drug addict who featured heavily in the closing stages of the first Red Dead Redemption. He's a professor from Yale who sets out to, quote-unquote, study the Native American populace, though only in the interest of furthering his own bigoted perspective. MacDougall doesn't actually make a physical appearance in Red Dead Redemption 2, but he is mentioned both through dialogue and in the game's literature. Purchase an issue of the New Hanover Gazette, and you'll see an advert for his new book being advertised on the first page. Number 15, Achievement Hunter. For those who've been watching YouTube for a good decade now, the words rooster and teeth are bound to mean something. They're one of the platform's largest creators, and one of their biggest outlets is Achievement Hunter, a YouTube channel founded by Jeff Ramsey and Jack Patillo back in 2008. Ramsey and Patillo both actually have cameos in Red Dead Redemption 2. The former spawns randomly in the world as a post office attendee, while the latter presides over Valentine's Soul Hotel. Number 14, the assassination of Jesse James. One of the most notable contributions to the Western genre this side of 2000 is the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, which starred Brad Pitt as the eponymous real-life figure. There's a scene in the film where James and his gang stage a train robbery, and in Red Dead Redemption 2, there's a scene framed almost exactly like it. Early on in Chapter 2, Arthur bands together with John and Sean to rob a train passing through West Elizabeth. They stop it in its tracks by blocking its path, much the same way James does in the Andrew Dominik film, which had Roger Deakins working behind the scenes as cinematographer. Number 13, Landon Ricketts. In the world of Red Dead, Landon Ricketts is a famous gunslinger of the Old West who spends his dying days in the searing heat of the Mexico border. He's a driving force in Red Dead Redemption when he crosses paths with John Marston, and though he doesn't appear in its prequel, he is mentioned through dialogue early on. When players are introduced to the bounty hunting mechanic at the Valentine Sheriff's office, one of the deputies on duty actually mentions Ricketts by name, speaking of the body count he's accumulated during his years as a gunslinger. Number 12, did someone ask for a hobbit hole? The mysterious hill home. Lord of the Rings isn't typically something you'd associate with the Old West, but here it is, represented in Rockstar's latest game. If you travel towards the northerly regions of the map, northeast of Valentine to be exact, you can find a muddy little hut with an unmistakable Tolkien-esque look. Study it, and Arthur will jot down a picture of a mysterious hill home. Number 11, The Jungle Book. Again, the Jungle Book isn't something you'd really think of when you think of the Deep South, but hey, Rockstar still saw fit to reference it in Red Dead Redemption 2. Travel to the marshy areas of Lemoyne and you can find Carr hanging from a tree. He looks pretty dead though, so the last traveler he encountered evidently didn't trust in him. Number 10, The Flying Machine. One of the most hilarious stranger missions found in the first Red Dead Redemption involves a creator called Charles Kinnear. He can be found in Mexico testing out his latest flying machine, and upon completion of the mission, he soars, only to plummet to his death immediately after. Kinnear's fingerprints are actually in Red Dead Redemption 2 as well, however. One of the picture shows the player can attend pertains to the subject of aviation, and details the exploits of Kinnear's father, who passed away while attempting flight himself. The crashed wreckage of another machine can be found towards the upper west corner of West Elizabeth 2, while a second can be spotted around Armadillo. The latter actually bears Charles' signature, and looks to be the same contraption he uses in Red Dead Redemption. Right, from this point onwards there will be major story spoilers, so please, look away now if you haven't finished Red Dead Redemption 2's story. Number 9. Finding DRAGIC'S Bright Bouncing Boy. The Bright Bouncing Boy Stranger mission is one of the best contained within Red Dead 2, but somewhat bizarrely, players have to seek out the story's resolution themselves. After finding Marco DRAGIC'S laboratory in the upper area of New Hanover, at which point the scientist will reveal the robot he's been working on, the mission itself will end. However, should the player return, they'll find DRAGIC dead on the floor, and his creation missing. Picking up the scientist's electric lantern, the player can then send Arthur into the mountains to search for the robot in question. Turns out the bright bouncing boy in question is mourning the demise of his father by his lonesome in the peaks of the northwest, exclaiming "Papa" repeatedly like some malfunctioning Wall-E. Number 8. Bonnie McFarlane's former flame. Bonnie McFarlane was a pivotal character in the first Red Dead Redemption, and though it is possible to visit the McFarlane Ranch should the player travel to New Austin, Bonnie doesn't actually make an appearance in Red Dead Redemption 2. If you cast your mind back to the first Red Dead Redemption, however, you'll most likely recall Bonnie being single. She doesn't find love until 1913, at which point John Marston has sadly passed away. But Red Dead Redemption 2 actually clues us in on what happened to her before the events that saw her meet Marston in the first game. Travelling south through to Armadillo, the player will notice that the area is completely desolate. People have been moved on due to an outbreak of cholera, but if the player heads to the Van Horn trading outpost, they'll come across a corpse, or at least what they think is a corpse. Should they loot it, the body will spring to life and then pass away, before handing Arthur a letter addressed to Bonnie herself. Number 7. The Blind Prophet predicts Red Dead's Grim Reaper. The Blind Prophet is a recurring stranger who the player can interact with during their travels across the Old West, and they're going to want to. He predicts key events in the story, including Micah's betrayal and Arthur's impending death, but there's an interaction with Marston that makes the character even more interesting. As Marston, the Blind Prophet can be found in between Beecher's Hope and the town of Blackwater. Should you stop and give him some money, he'll accurately predict the events of Red Dead Redemption, mentioning specifically the arrival of 2 people, one from this world, Edgar Ross, and one not. The latter seems like a blatant reference to the Grim Reaper-esque figure from Red Dead's I Know You Stranger mission, who repeatedly tests Marston's morality throughout the game. If the player heads into Armadillo itself, things get even creepier. Inquire as to why the general store shopkeep has a photo of a mustached man with a top hat, and he won't be able to explain why. It's the very same figure from Red Dead Redemption, and the fact that Rockstar have doubled down on his supernatural qualities is brilliant to see. Number 6. The Town of Tumbleweed. Cast your mind back to the first Red Dead Redemption and you'll probably recall the town of Tumbleweed. It's where you rescue Bonnie from after she's been captured by a nearby group of bandits, and it's completely deserted by 1913, the very picture of a literal ghost town. However, should the player opt to venture south to the town in Red Dead Redemption 2, they'll find it populated top to bottom. There's a sheriff who enlists your help to deal with the raids from the vicious Del Lobo gang, and it has everything from a butcher to a general store and gunsmith. Number 5. You can visit all the gang's graves. A particularly grim detail, but an interesting one all the same. All those who died throughout the course of Red Dead Redemption 2's story can be visited afterwards. They'll be in a grave, of course, but still, they're all marked, not on the map, and there's a trophy/achievement for finding them all throughout the game. Undoubtedly, the first one that many people want to visit will be Arthur's, which is located towards the upper regions of the map just above the aforementioned Hill House. Inscribed on it are, and I quote, "For those who hunger and thirst for righteousness," an apt quote for the character, at least if you played him honourably. Other graves that can be visited include the 2 members killed off-screen in the wake of the Blackwater Massacre, Sean, Lenny, Hosea, Eagle Flies, and more. Number 4. John Marston can't swim. John Marston can't swim, neither in Red Dead Redemption nor in this game either, it turns out. Though it would have been pretty easy for Rockstar to let John swim for the sake of gameplay, players will find that the character still hasn't mastered the art of navigating water, thus maintaining continuity and making for one of the most hilarious aspects of stepping into Marston's boots during the game's epilogue. Just make sure to not fall out of any boats if you're going fishing. Number 3. Marston mimics Red Dead Redemption's cover art. The cover for Red Dead Redemption 1 might not be the most iconic in Rockstar's library, but they still include a cheeky little nod to it in the prequel's epilogue. When Pronghorn Ranch is subject to a nighttime raid, John is forced to spring into action and promptly leads a retaliatory strike into enemy territory. They take down most of those who attack the ranch, but one gets the drop on Marston. A scuffle ensues before he picks up a double-barreled sawn-off shotgun and approaches the man in question, and fires off a shot at point-blank range, just like in Red Dead's cover. Number 2. Finding Dutch's gang in the epilogue. As Red Dead's story comes to a close, Dutch's gang begins to collapse. Karen disappears, as does Reverend Swanson, but while those two can't be seen post-game, the likes of Pearson, Tilly Jackson, Mary Beth, and Rain Falls can all be located during the epilogue after their respective fates are revealed during the credits. Pearson, the camp cook, can be found in Rhodes as the manager of his own general store. Mary Beth is a novelist and can be found waiting for a train in Valentine, and Tilly Jackson has settled down in Saint-Denis with a lawyer husband. Rain Falls, on the other hand, can be found at the Antwerp train station, returning to Canada after visiting the grave of his son. Number 1. CANIS CANEM Edit. Upon completion of the Noblest of Men and a Woman Stranger mission, which sees Arthur Morgan shoot Jim Boy Calloway, the player will be presented with a custom Schofield revolver, with CANIS CANEM Edit carved on its barrel. Sound familiar? Well, it should, because it's the tagline for 2006's Bully, a title many expect Rockstar to expand on in the coming years, given reports that the studio are actively pursuing a sequel. It's far from confirmation that it's happening, of course, but the message, when taken together with the Endless Summer trophy, certainly hints that Bully 2 is on the way. Here's hoping that actually is the case, even if it is a little soon to contemplate what's next for Rockstar. And that was our list on Red Dead Redemption 2's best Easter eggs. Stay tuned to WhatCulture.com for a list from Josh Brown detailing the game's spookiest Easter eggs. But for now, if you could like, share, and subscribe, well, you make this the rootinest, tootinest list ever. As always, I've been Ewan, and I'll see you next time.